What's going on, guys? If you're new here, hit me with that subscribe button. If you like true crime content, if you're not, you know I like to just jump right into it. Majority of you guys have probably heard about the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. It opened in 1927. It's been depicted in TV shows like American Horror Story, a couple of different documentaries, and even a movie within the last couple of decades. Why, you might ask? There's been 16 people documented who have passed in various gut-wrenching ways since the hotel has opened its doors. However, the hotel manager at the time said the body count is closer to 80. It was a temporary home for Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, back in the 80s during the midst of his crime spree. Hotel staff said they used to see Ramirez running through the hotel halls carrying large objects out to the dumpster, and a few times he was seen naked running back to his hotel room. Hotel Cecil was just one of those places that nobody spoke about what they saw. In this video, I want to talk about some of the unbelievable things that happened at this later named California landmark, as well as some of the unfortunate, gruesome deaths that happened on the property. The last one being as soon as 2015. I will say I've heard of the Cecil Hotel before I started to research for this video. However, after doing research, I found out a lot more than I actually knew. And truthfully, it was hard for me to wrap my mind around that all of this stuff actually happened. So fair warning, from here on, viewers' discretion is heavily advised. Also, timestamps are available in the description if you want to skip around. I will tell you guys, if this video does well, I live about 2 hours away from Hotel Cecil, so my channel is fairly new. If this video gets to 100 likes, I'll drive the 2 hours all the way to the hotel and vlog what I can throughout. So smash the like button if you want to see that. Honestly, I'm scared. Hotel Cecil opened in 1927, costing a whopping $1 million to build, consisting of 14 floors and 700 rooms. This massive building sat between 6th Street and 7th Street in Los Angeles, and it was meant to be a flashy, nice hotel for international business people, as well as middle-class tourists and people visiting the huge city of Los Angeles. Well, then the Great Depression happened, and LA was hit hard. It became harder and harder to fill the 700 rooms, so the hotel inevitably had to slash prices. They also switched up the layout to more of a hostel style layout, where each guest did get their own room, however they had to share a bathroom with another guest. Long story short, the hotel never really had a chance to live up to what it was meant to be. Something else that tanked the value was the fact that Skid Row was just blocks away from the hotel. When the Great Depression hit, sanitary conditions were also declining. So Hotel Cecil gained the reputation for being the home of sex workers, people down on their luck, and worst of all, criminals. Percy Cook was the first known death that happened on the property of the Cecil Hotel. He was former real estate who did very, very well for his family, his wife, his kids. He had a house which he bought. Unfortunately, his marriage took a nosedive and a divorce was happening. His wife wanted to squeeze him for everything he had, so she took his kid. She took the house. It was terrible. It drove him into the ground. Cook wrote this in a note to his wife in his room at the Cecil Hotel, and I quote, "Money cannot buy happiness. I have tried it, and I find that it cannot be done. I have lost my wife, my son, and my home, and I am doing the only thing left for me to do." End quote. Percy Cook ended his own life via gunshot on January 22nd, 1927. The same year the Cecil Hotel was opened. Between 1931 and 1938, there were 3 more bodies that were written off as all of them taking their own lives in the Cecil Hotel. It is worth to note all 3 men held some type of stature. The first of the 3 was named W.K. Norton. His parents were highly regarded in India, where they opened and ran the Norton Orphanage, which still exists today. When his parents passed away, they handed the orphanage down to their son. At that point, he was living half of his life in India, taking care of the orphanage, and half of his life in Los Angeles, where his other family lived. Well, one day, W.K. Norton went missing from his LA County house. To his family and friends, it seemed like he just vanished out of thin air. However, he just left. Where did he go? the Cecil Hotel, where he checked in under the alias James Willis. Unfortunately, 5 days later, his body was found with multiple pill capsules filled with poison. These capsules were found in his jacket pocket. After an autopsy, it was determined that he passed away from ingesting these pills. Then came Army Sergeant Louis Borden, who unfortunately took his own life in the hotel by slitting his throat via razor. A note was found next to his body that explained his health was declining fast, and he thought this was the best way out. In 1938, Marine Corps fireman Roy Thompson climbed out his 14th floor window and jumped out. Police were called by hotel staff, who discovered his body on the skylight of the building next to the hotel. This was the first of many of people that jumped. 8 different hotel guests have fallen from the hotel, whether it was accidental or intentional. And by intentional, I'm referring to probably the most disturbing death that's ever taken place at the hotel, ever in my opinion. But honestly, who's counting? Dorothy Purcell and her boyfriend were guests at the hotel in 1944. According to Dorothy, she was having really bad sharp pains in her stomach in the middle of the night. She snuck out of bed, not wanting to wake her boyfriend up, which is insane, and headed to the nearest restroom. Again, these restrooms were on the outside of the rooms, so she had to exit the room, find the restroom. She went in by herself. And honestly, guys, I can't believe this next part actually happened. Dorothy Purcell gave birth on that bathroom floor that night. She claims that she had no idea she was pregnant, and neither did her boyfriend. After she was done cutting the umbilical cord, she picked up her newborn baby, which was confirmed to be breathing. She walked out of the bathroom, made eye contact with the nearest window, and from 14 stories up, she pushed her newborn baby out the window of Hotel Cecil. Purcell returned to her boyfriend and got back in bed and fell asleep for the night. The next day, the baby was found on the skylight of the building next to the hotel, and Dorothy Purcell was arrested. It gets worse, guys. Purcell said the baby was not breathing when she gave birth to him, and that's why she discarded him out the window. But an autopsy proved that there was still air in the baby's lungs at the point of impact. So Purcell's story of the baby coming out as stillborn is simply not true. Dorothy Purcell was charged with murder, but found not guilty by way of insanity. Holy shit. Talk about oh my goodness. Another case of somebody allegedly jumping from the Cecil Hotel went from a suicide and became a homicide. What do I mean? In 1962, 27-year-old Pauline jumped from the 9th floor of the Cecil Hotel after writing her final goodbyes to her husband. Unfortunately, she didn't only leap from that 9th floor, but she landed directly on top of 65-year-old George Gianni, who was just innocently walking down the street, both unfortunately dying on impact. That is absolutely crazy. Maybe it was just his time. Just 2 years later, a 59-year-old woman was found dead in one of the hotel rooms. She was stabbed, sexually assaulted, and strangled prior to her death. Her killer was never found. The 1980s. When Richard Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, stayed on the 14th floor of the Cecil Hotel during the midst of his crime spree. Hotel staff said they saw him dump bloody clothes in the dumpster multiple times, then go into an all-out sprint, a lot of times naked, back up to his hotel room. Could you imagine being the staff and just turning a blind eye? These sightings of Richard Ramirez weren't reported by staff until after he was caught, so they kept their mouth shut until after his arrest. The infamous serial killer Jack Unterweger visited the Cecil Hotel after getting out of Austrian prison for taking somebody's life. He was sentenced to life in prison for the murder. However, the state regrettably claimed him as rehabilitated and let him out on parole. Unterweger became somewhat of a celebrity / famous writer after writing a hit article about sex workers. He traveled to Los Angeles for work because he heard about the Cecil Hotel, which happened to be a hotspot for that thing. Well, during his 5-week-long stay at the hotel, he ended up murdering 3 prostitutes via strangulation using their undergarments. He ended up fleeing to Florida, where ultimately he was arrested and he took his own life in prison. What a coward. So at this point, the 1990s are coming to an end, and the Cecil Hotel has been the grounds of some of the most unspeakable events that will go down in history forever. In 2011, though, they went through a rebrand in hopes to start the hotel on a completely new slate. This was when the concept of Stay on Main came into the picture. Stay on Main was marketed as a budget hostel for young tourists. The thing is, it didn't completely replace the Cecil Hotel. Instead, the building was divided into 3 separate uses. Certain floors were for long-term, low-income tenants, others were for the Stay on Main, and the remaining top 3 floors were for the Cecil Hotel. I want to make myself clear. 2013 is by far the Cecil Hotel's most infamous known year of being open. 21-year-old British Columbian native Elisa Lam unfortunately passed away at the Cecil Hotel in 2013. The circumstances are chilling. She was the travel student. She's going to school abroad. She's trying to make something of herself. She's trying to see the world that's right in front of her. And because the Cecil Hotel was cheap, Elisa Lam checked in on January 26, 2013. She was staying in the low-cost hostel-style rooms, and she happened to be housed with other guests in the same room. However, there were complaints made by her roommates that she was being loud and obnoxious, and she would go in and out of the room an annoying amount of times. So Elisa Lam was moved to a single room. So on Elisa's checkout date, January 31st, her parents didn't hear from her at all, which was very odd, not like their daughter. So they immediately called the police department and reported her missing. It's worth to note during the investigation, the hotel didn't make it easy to recover any type of surveillance footage that police were trying to gather to find this girl, and weren't open to giving any type of comments on where they thought Elisa Lam might be. However, police finally got a hold of a piece of footage of Elisa Lam going into an elevator. I've looked at this clip numerous times, and you guys can probably make of it the same that I can, so I'm just going to show it. There was also no footage of Elisa Lam leaving the hotel, unfortunately, and there's a disturbing reason behind that. Weeks after Lam was supposed to check out, hotel guests started to complain about water pressure in the showers and sinks, and also that the water tasted different. It was reported to the hotel staff, but it wasn't actually investigated until one of the guests had black sludge-like liquid coming out of one of the faucets. A hotel employee headed through the locked door to the rooftop that housed the hotel's water tanks. Well, everything seemed fine as he was walking up to the tanks, but when the lid was taken off, an immediate smell of decomposing flesh flooded out of the hatch. Elisa Lam's waterlogged body was floating in the Cecil Hotel's water supply, and the water was still turned on. To add to this madness, her death was ruled an accidental drowning because there was no drugs and a very small amount of alcohol was found in her system, along with no signs of physical trauma. So homicide was just taken off the table. Authorities believe she climbed out of her 5th-story window, up a fire escape, to the roof, got on top of the water container, took the lid off, got in, and sealed it up behind her, ultimately drowning. All these questions remain unanswered, which makes me think the hotel had to have tried to cover something up. The last known death that occurred on the property of the Cecil Hotel was in 2015 when an unidentified man allegedly jumped from the top floor, landing on the ground familiar with so many jumpers before him. I want to know what you think. Do you think the Cecil Hotel helped cover up any of these deaths or even took part in any of them? How many staff members do you think looked the other way from what was going on behind the quiet but so loud walls called the Cecil Hotel? Thanks for watching, guys. Like I said in the beginning, if this video gets 100 likes, I will make the 2-hour drive all the way down to LA to the Cecil Hotel, and I'll vlog what I can through it and take you guys along with me. So if you want to see that, slap a like on this video real quick. I really appreciate it. And if you like the content, subscribe to the channel. Stay safe out there, guys. Peace.